today. I'm excited to get a chance to chat with you. And I wondered if we could start with some personal background on you and your journey, if you would share with us a bit about that.
Sure, no problem. So, kind of an unusual journey. At the age of 20, I was in college. I was an international relations major, thinking I might be a diplomat or go work in the World Bank or who knows what. And I randomly got a job at a very small startup company doing inside sales, and that company was called Adobe Systems. And at the time, I had no idea what hardware or software was. And that summer it really seduced me. And I hate to use that terminology, but working in software industry was very exciting. Learning about technology and everything, I had not had exposure to that. And then fast forward, after college, I got a permanent job at Adobe and eventually Apple. And then I took a slight turn. I stayed home with kids and enjoyed that very much. But then when I wanted to get back into high tech, no one wanted to hire me. And I think this is important, whether you're a woman or a man or anyone out there who's taken time off, you still add value. And I think it's getting better now, but this was about 10 years ago. And no one wanted to hire me. They said, Ursula, you were great at Apple, Adobe, but that's been like 6, 7 years. And during that time when I was at home, I actually wrote a book, a fictional book, a thriller. And one of my neighbors happened to read it, and she's like, "Hey, Ursula, you can write." I said, "Yeah, yes, I can." And she's like, "Well, I need someone to write some customer success stories." And I said, "I can do it." And she's like, "Great, I work at SAP." I'm like, "What's SAP?" No idea, but I jumped in head first. And I ended up writing about 12 customer success stories, and my VP really enjoyed them. And she brought me into her office one day and she said, "Hey, I see that you used to work at Adobe and Apple. Do you want to do more? I know you can." And I said, "Absolutely." And she said, "Well, we've got these two interns running our social media accounts for our small and mid-sized side of the business. Do you think you could do it?" Absolutely. Didn't have really that much experience, but I just dove in head first and just took it from there. And now here I am 8 years later, and I'm head of our global influencer marketing program.
What a great success story. There's so many things to take from that already, all about how working moms can re enter the workforce. To be a success story as a contractor at a large company, I know there are so many contractors out there who are hoping to have their role turn into a full time one. And also to just hear that companies were having interns run their entire social media. Hopefully, that's not happening
No, no.
anymore.
And this was a smaller side of the business. I have to decide it's not the huge SAP, it's a smaller side of it. But yes, at the time, this was 8 years ago.
Yes, yes. Please, if anyone out there is having interns run their social media today, stop it immediately.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and you said that the first time you heard about SAP, probably because it's B2B, you asked yourself, what is that? So, for those who aren't aware, can you share a little bit with us about what SAP does?
Absolutely. So I always say the S in SAP doesn't stand for sexy. It is pronounced SAP, not SAP. It's a German company. They didn't know it would translate differently in English, right? 48 years ago when it was established. But the interesting thing with SAP is 77% of all revenue transactions run through an SAP ERP system. And people don't realize that. So what I like to say is we are the biggest company in the world that everyone uses every day, but they don't know anything about it, right? And we do all spectrums of business. We do the back end, front end, HR, ERP, CX, everything you can imagine. We have everything.
Well, that is a lot of acronyms. Thank you.
True. Sorry about that.
No, no worries. And before you got to the role that you're in now, I love that you were helping to run the SAP small and mid-sized business social media channels. This reminds me of Undercover Boss because I feel like no one really has an idea of the work that it takes to do the job until they actually do it. And I imagine now that that has made you so much better prepared to do the job that you're in today.
Absolutely. I would say you have to be in the trenches. And that's one thing is I had a limited social media presence when I took on the role because of what I had done as a writer, but not to the level what it is today. And so I had to dive in there. At the time, tweet chats were a great way to reach an audience. And so every single day I was attending one or two tweet chats. it really honed my writing skills for writing in 140 characters or fewer at the time, right? That's what it was. And also, what it got me to do is I had to really look at the type of content we were creating and the vehicles we were using to broadcast that. So anything from blogs to podcasts to live streaming. And the one thing I'd love to bring up is like, who out there in the audience remembers Blab? Blab was this one platform that came out before like Meerkat and then Periscope and even Facebook Live and LinkedIn Live. It was a great platform, and we were doing stuff at Super Bowl 50 with partners using Blab. And the great thing I'll have to say is my VP at the time, Megan Sullivan, I have to give her props that she allowed me to be innovative and creative and really indulge in the storytelling of how SAP helps the world run better and improve people's lives. And that is kind of, we'll get into this in a that whole thought leadership and relating to an audience. And I was able to really do that in that role I had in our small and mid-sized part of the company.
I love that. Not only a VP that allows a younger team to innovate, but just thinking about how much
younger team.
Along.
I'll take that.
But thinking about how much further so many organizations would be if executives were actually fluent and knowledgeable about all of those platforms that you are. So, I mean, when I saw that you were active on Twitter, I celebrated because there are so many senior corporate executives who don't spend any time on these platforms. So big kudos and congratulations to you for that.
Thank you.
You've said that you're a lover of three things that I also love and find so important in the work that we do. The first one is storytelling. Can you tell us a bit about why you feel that's so important to connect to in the world of cultural marketing?
Well, everyone has a story to tell and everyone wants to be heard, but you have to tell it in a way that relates to your audience. And so it's interesting whenever we run these campaigns, the first thing I say to any of the stakeholders is, what does success look like? But then also it's like, who's your audience? Because audiences, they go to different watering holes. Content resonates very differently with them. And so when you look at all the types of mediums that us digital marketers can use, you can have live stream, blog, podcast. You have to figure out where your audience wants to be. Sometimes they are avid readers. Sometimes they want to watch video. And we'll get into this in a little bit, but the B2C market is very different than B2B. B2B, you're going to have people that are going to actually do the research. They're going to be watching content and they're going to be reading and also listening. Podcasts have exploded in the B2B market. We've been doing podcasts for a good 3 years now. And so you have to be a very good storyteller in everything you do. And it's paramount, right? Because if you can't tell a good story, who's going to even tune in and want to take the next step with you in the buyer's journey?
Absolutely. I coach teams to ask themselves who should care about this. Why is this important? Anytime you're putting something out in the world, like why should somebody care about it? Don't just speak at them. Really present some entertainment, something interesting.
Yeah.
And your second love is authenticity, which I feel like is one of the buzzwords of 2020, but it has come across my desk a couple of times as like, what can we do to be authentic? So it's almost like it's box checking now, but we're talking about true authenticity. And can you talk to us a little bit about why that resonates with you?
Yeah, and I think, the great thing is when you and I first connected to do a pre-brief on this, you and I automatically were just authentic with each other, just talking about everything. And you have to be that way today because your audience, they want to relate to you as a person. And I know, depending on, celebrity or whatever, some people don't want to be as authentic because they have a brand that they want to protect. But, the one thing is when you work with thought leaders and influencers, you are collaborating with them and they're going to be like that voice for your brand. And so you have to make sure it's authentic and real, right? Because you don't want to sign up with someone and then, maybe they're doing stuff offline that is not professional, right? And so authenticity is very, very important. And you don't have to be overt about it. There's certain things I don't share with my audience, and that's okay. But in general, you have to be very authentic with who you are, because then you're more believable, and then that creates trust. And trust is that commodity that we all need, because if your audience trusts you, they're going to go to the next step in that buyer's journey with you.
Absolutely. I think in her early days, Kim Kardashian, when she was doing branded posts, did a couple of tire posts that just
Yeah, it's
backfired
like,
horribly
yeah,
because
right?
everyone in the comments was like, come on, Kim, you don't know anything about tires. And I think that's just such a good example of when you're looking to partner with influencers, you want to be sure that they actually use and love and can advocate for the product that you're asking them to promote.
Exactly. I had one influencer, Brian Fanzo, out there. Hi, Brian, if you're listening. And I remember he told me once that a brand came to him and said, "Oh, we love what you do. Can you promote our skinny jeans?" And he's like, "Skinny jeans? I don't wear skinny jeans." Influencers have to be picky too, because it would be a bad reflection on your own brand if you just went, to get the money just to promote something. So just like the Kim Kardashian example you gave with tires. Come on, Kim, really? Have you even touched a tire?
Right. And the last love of influencers. And this is just really for me the secret sauce, something that I've been doing for years that has given me an advantage. And that is just having a lot of influencer relationships, and they're just a text or a DM away for me. And I feel like a lot of executives don't cultivate this network in the same way that they cultivate other networks. And I'm wondering if you could share how you built that learning and how you exercise it now.
Yeah, what I'll say is relationships are paramount in this business, right? When you're working with thought leaders and influencers, you have to cultivate the relationships. And like just like when you and I spoke for the first time, I like to take at least 5, 10 minutes, just how are you doing? And especially, I mean, come on, 2020 is a shit show. Sorry, I'm saying that. And everyone has a lot of challenges. And so I'm a people person and I want to get to know that person. And so I follow and watch and read and listen to all of what my influencers do, just because I'm a people person and I take an interest. And this really, really helps out when you build that relationship. And I'll give you a great example. One of our influencers, Tama McCleary, worked with her for several years, and this was a couple years ago when SAP, our first time we are going to be at South by Southwest, very first time. And I knew that we needed to work with some influencers, but the content team that I was working with, they didn't quite understand because first time doing this. About 10 days before South by Southwest, still no influencers involved, yet my CMO calls me, Ursula, I'm going to be on this panel in our SAP house. I want Tamara. She's my favorite influencer. Can she work with us? Well, this is 10 days before South by Southwest. I knew because Tamara and I were in touch to be there, but she wasn't there over those days. Quick call to her, talk to her, let's rearrange some things. She moved the world and she was able to do it. And we knocked it out of the park with her. And so it's because of that relationship that I have with her. I can call on her and she's like, you know what, Ursula, this is going to be difficult for me, but I will help you. And then in turn, I invited her to one of our events and she was like, you know, Ursula, I really need to get over to this other, because she's a consultant. I need to get over to this other event. Could I leave a day early? I'm like, you know what? Absolutely. You do, things for me. I'm going to do things for you. And so that relationship is so paramount, but you have to be authentic about it. Getting back to that, you have to take a real interest. If you're fake about it, people can see right through it. So build that relationship and it'll help you.
Absolutely. And we've talked about the wave of trends that we've seen throughout social blogs and live streams and videos. What are some cultural heartbeats that you're seeing in the market right now in the midst of the shit show that is 2020 that you think will continue to grow?
Well, you know what it is? It's these video shorts. And I think a great example, and I don't, everyone has different opinions about this platform, but Quibi, right? Quibi is a great example that they have 10 minutes or less, these little shorts. They've actually made series out of it. So what I see is a combination of digital shorts, but then having a regular cadence, a regular drumbeat, a regular series. And video is so important right now, but it could also be podcast. And so when I talk to my different teams I work with, I said, let's not do a one and done, right? One blog, one podcast. No, let's bring in someone as a host or a co-host and put together a whole series. And so it's a combination of, I'd say video and podcasting is the big thing, at least for my industry with B2B, but having quick snackable, get in there, build that awareness. And then if they want to take the next step, they can dive into like a webinar, right? They can dive into that white paper, whatever they do. But for awareness building, it's got to be the digital shorts.
Yeah, I think that learning around doing something consistently instead of just focusing on a one-off and expecting these great big results is a great takeaway because
Yeah.
especially like look at how prevalent webinars are in the market right now because we're all at home. But how many people have done it? I'm going to give Brand Innovators a little shout out
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
How
yeah.
many people have done it on the level of consistency that Brand Innovators
Right?
has, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like everybody knows now, like, oh, let's see what they're doing today because there's always a conversation to be had over here. And that level of consistency is super important to flex and demonstrate across social. We know that the biggest YouTubers see success because they have a consistent publishing schedule. Their fans know that they can count on them at least once a week for new content.
And people are hungry for the content. They want it. So deliver it to them, but make sure it's good storytelling. That's the key thing.
Yes, got to be good. Got to be good storytelling and authentic.
Yep.
So B2B marketing, you've mentioned and B, and your contacts are certainly different than what our society thinks of when they hear the word influencers. These are not your problematic bikini clad women escaping COVID
No,
in the Hamptons. These are
no.
like professors of AI in Munich, right?
Yeah.
So I'm so curious about that entire world and how you uncover the influencers that work for you.
Yeah. So it is totally different. And the one thing I want to emphasize right here for your audience is, B2B is very different. And if you're thinking of working with influencers, if we at SAP, with the most unsexy product out there, can be successful with influencer marketing, so can you, right? So I'll just put it out there. But the interesting thing is that with B2B, it's so different than B2C, as you described. It's kind of like B2C is more the bikini model, that's the exaggeration. But B2B, you really have to find those key innovators that are doing things differently and understand the technology. Because what we're trying to do is build awareness that you might be doing your regular business activities using different technology, but maybe AI can help you do it faster. Maybe AI can help you do it better. And so what we do is we'll bring in people that, as we mentioned before, a professor in Munich who actually teaches about AI. And how we find them is we use lots of different tools. So you can have influencer like discovery tools. Like I know there's Tracker, there's Analytica, there's a lot of smaller ones out there, and you just have to research it, right? It's like a CRM for influencers. But understand that that doesn't give you the whole spectrum because LinkedIn doesn't have an open API. So LinkedIn doesn't work with any of these tools out there. So you have to actually go into LinkedIn and do your own searching. So we use Google a lot. I have a very skilled group of people on my team. And sometimes I'm like, how did you find this? They'll look at podcasts, they'll look at other influencers that are similar and see who's engaged with them and who is consistently talking, who are they following. And so it's a deep dive. This is no joke. When we work with influencers, we like to do a deep dive and really find out, what they're talking about, what they're, read, watch, and listen to everything they do.
And do you tend to work with these people over a long period of time rather than a
That's the
transactional
goal.
situation?
That is the goal. I mean, there might be one-offs here or there because maybe there's a virtual event and they want this very specific speaker. But I always encourage everyone, and now it's great because there's a lot more research on it, and you can find on the internet now where I can send articles to my stakeholders, say, listen, consistency shows, that's the way to go. And I think the great thing though is we've had so much success at our company that now stakeholders come to us and like, we want to do this. We love what you're doing. So consistency and a consistent drumbeat with the same types of influencers. I mean, we'd like to expand our voices because there's always people out there that we come across, but definitely consistency.
You're the cool kid in school now.
I
Everybody wants
try. I
the
try.
magic of Ursula.
Well, I'm not the millennial, but I try to be one.
And one of the things that's consistently changing in our space because it's so nascent is measurement. And I know that influencer marketing works when it's done well, but so often the expectation is that one campaign should drive huge results, or that if you can't measure immediate sales, it's not effective. So I'm wondering how you measure your efficacy when there are so few benchmarks with the specific work that you're doing.
Yeah, benchmarks is difficult because as we talked in the preview here, it's like the forms of media change each year. And so live streaming is one day hot, maybe it's video, maybe it's downloads a podcast. But what we do is there's 11 different parts of the organization that we work with. And the first thing we ask is like, what does success look like for you? So for example, maybe they want to have, I don't know, 1,000 people show up to a webinar, right? So at least that's something that we can measure. And then also we can look at benchmarks of what we've done in the past. So for example, right now we're talking with the RPA, Robotic Processing Automation side of the business, if you didn't know what that acronym is. And they were asking us specifically that question, what could we expect from a webinar? And we were able to share with them, hey, there are 3 other programs we've done this year. Here are the benchmarks that we were able to build because of that. And so I don't like to say you have to have a specific benchmark because it changes every year and it changes because of the medium and technology. But definitely there should be something you're trying to attain. So that's why, with stakeholders, they want to know, well, okay, for like a blog, did we get 1,000 views? For videos, do we get 10,000 views? I know some of you out there that are in the B2C market, you're like, we want 1 million views. B2B, that's not the case. But it just depends on what that stakeholder wants to achieve. And that one thing also I'll tell you is in the B2B market, we don't necessarily have a direct correlation to a tweet to a sale. So Marketo is not going to really help us to analyze that because we have partners. So partners are a big part of SAP's ecosystem, not only as implementers, but they also, actually work with our customers hand in hand. And so what we try to do is we create the awareness and then we can create leads from it. So at least we can track that. And so it's a little bit complicated, but as long as all your stakeholders are on board with the measurement that they all agree shows success, then there's nothing holding you back. You can create anything.
You're setting the bar for yourself and then accomplishing a higher and higher measurement and results from it. I love that.
Yeah, and the other thing, just real quick, the other thing just to add to it is, they're influencers too. It's like, behind the scenes, we kind of have a leaderboard that we follow our influencers. So when they are in our campaigns, if we have a group of them, if there's one that's kind of trailing, that's not being as effective, we will talk to them. So there are measurements like that with influencers ourselves. So it's not just like, let's get those views. It's like, well, let's figure out which influencers are working the best. And sometimes maybe there is a personal issue and maybe they couldn't get there to do something. So we try to collaborate on all spectrums.
And given that they're experts, are there social media presences and the audiences that they're developing around their expert topic? Is that how you're leveraging their influence, or are you pulling their influence and expertise through for your own platforms, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both, because sometimes, like we referenced this one professor in Munich, he doesn't have a large social following, but in the industry, he's very well known, right? He writes a lot of white papers. People know him as like the OG, right, of AI. And so what we like to do is then partner him with maybe we have an internal expert on AI, and then we have a influencer that's, maybe he's not the professor, but he's maybe worked in, he's been a CIO and he's actually worked with AI in his, daily life. And we kind of bring them all together. So it's a combination of things. And so if we're working with a thought leader that doesn't have a huge social media presence, that's not necessarily a turnoff for us, right? Because we can pair them with other people that do to help build that awareness.
Got it. And you've said that at SAP, you make a product that can't be touched. So how do you tap into culture to express your intentions?
Yeah, I always laugh at that because we have a product, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it. So like when you look at like the consumer side, it's very different. But the cool thing, which people don't realize, is like our mission statement is we help the world run better and people improve people's lives. But when you look at it, it's our customers. Our customers are the ones doing this, and there are some amazing things that they do. So we tap into that. We want to help and promote that. So for example, there's a small mid-sized company called Mod Pizza. Maybe some of your viewers out there have heard of them. And they use our ERP product, not sexy, right? It helps them run their business. But the cool thing that they do that people don't realize is they actually like to help people that are disadvantaged with placing them in jobs with their company. So people that maybe have just been in prison and have come out, but they're good now and they want to start a new life, or people have disabilities. And so when we tell these stories, we like to showcase our customers because twofold. One, it showcases that, yes, they're using our product to help their, company run their business, but then look at kind of the social responsibility side of what they're doing, right? And it all works together in tandem. And so how we kind of tap into this culturally is I love it when we can bring customers into our campaigns. Customers are the best influencers, right? Because if you can find a prospect out there that can relate to that customer, they're going to go the next step in the buyer's journey. And so showcasing our customers is the cultural way to really showcase what SAP does. And I'll just say one last thing about this is during the pandemic, people are stuck in their house. And when you look around, I would say probably 90% of everything you have in your house somehow went through SAP. Supply chain, a customer of ours, what is. You take that Chobani yogurt out, that's a customer of ours. And so having cultural relevancy and cultural influence, we like to work with our customers.
Now I'm just really curious about which items in my house are
exactly.
by
You're looking around.
I want I think is something so valuable, yet often people don't understand it as a value until they've lived through a community driving project. I was the head of creators at Vine, and even though the app shut down years ago, I still derive so much value from that community daily. It's a network of people who will never be broken apart, and we have this connection together. And I'm wondering some ways that you've built community and seen it drive cultural relevance.
Oh, community is just as important as it's part of building relationships. And so what we do with our campaigns is, as I said before, we're not just one and done. We like to bring in a group of influencers to work together. And a great example is back in June, we had our largest in-person event go virtual, and it's called Sapphire. And what we did was we brought in 14 influencers, and they had specialties in all different areas of the business. But the fun thing that we did, and we usually do this in person, but we had to be kind of creative virtually, was we would have Zoom parties. And then we'd also have emails behind the scenes to keep them informed. And the great thing that we started off was, hey, let's all introduce each other. Let's get to know each other. And for as much as I want to collaborate them and I want their audiences to hear about SAP and whatnot, it was really cool to see the community, the network that started to form. And so, for example, we had some influencers that all know everything about supply chain and an influencer that knows about CX. Well, they went off and they did their own webinar together because of meeting through us, right? Because they realized, oh my gosh, we have a lot in common. And so I see that, quite often. And I really enjoy that because, as I said before, it's not only us bringing together this group to talk about, build awareness about SAP, but it's also it's a cool network of just innovators and experts, and they can learn from each other.
Absolutely. And so then when you become sort of the host of that community and you're the one responsible for connecting all of these people, you'll always have a role in that community as well, even if it travels beyond you. There's still that
Absolutely.
value.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love being part of that. It's magic.
Same. Okay, I'm going to go to questions from the audience. Many brands have drastically reduced media budgets over the last few months. Can you talk about if your media plan has adjusted and if your budget has reduced, has that driven more creativity and efficiency with your strategies?
Great question. I think everyone's budgets have been slashed everywhere. I mean, come on, that's reality. And yes, mine has. The interesting thing is we have gotten creative where one, I tin cup quite a bit, right? So we go to different teams and we get money. But the other thing, I look internally at my team, and my team has decided to get creative. So we have people on the team that are like stepping up, going, I can do the video editing for this. I can do the podcast for this. And I don't mean to take away from external vendors and agencies because they do an amazing job. But, sometimes for some of these campaigns that are not as complicated, you know what? We can do it internally. And so that's where we get creative is we all have put in a ton of extra time. And right now, to have a job is a privilege. And so I'm going to give it 150%, and my team does too. And there's kind of passion behind that. So I hope that answers the question. But yeah, budgets have gotten slashed and you have to get creative.
Yeah, the scrappy got to scrap even harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, here's another one. You mentioned tools that use the resourcefulness of your team. What's the best thing that a partner can do to help you provide value and make your life easier? Love that question. If anybody ever says to you, how can I make your life easier? You're a friend of mine.
Well, no, exactly. And when I hear that, I said, who is it? Come talk to me, send me an email. And that's the one thing, like I was someone who I always raised my hand, how can I help you? Right. And so if someone came to me, I would say, let's talk. And I've had actually people over the years do that. There was a colleague of mine, Ryan Sonnenberg, and he just started joining some of these live streams we had. And then we ended up collaborating on a video series project that we did together. And so how can a partner help us is contact me, because I don't have anything set in place, but the more we brainstorm, and I love to brainstorm, right? Because sometimes I'll have these brainstorms and a new idea comes out. Absolutely. Contact me, whoever that was, if you're, somehow related to SAP, or maybe you have an idea.
Okay, Greg Wasserman, you heard that. That was an invitation. One of the people that we were talking about when we spoke earlier about cultural impact was Michael Jordan, right? You referred to him as one of the first major influence steps with the release of The Last Dance. What were your takeaways from that documentary that we can apply into building cultural influence today?
So first of all, Last Dance, Netflix. If you haven't seen it, go see it. I was a collegiate athlete. I actually played soccer, or in Europe, foosball, as they would say. But it kind of brought back, obviously, I was not on the levels of Michael Jordan, but it brought back memories from being in athletics and sports. And also, I grew up with Michael Jordan, even though I'm from Silicon Valley. The Warriors at the time were not good. But the thing that was interesting, you have to understand, is like, Michael Jordan was one of those first cultural icons, the cultural influence, where everyone wanted to be like Mike, right? Remember that? He had the Gatorade, then he had his Air Jordans. But the thing that's interesting, this is the lesson that we can take away from it, is at the time we didn't have social media like we do now. And so this kind of relates to everything that we're talking about. Is in today's, society, this whole cancel culture, it could just like end a relationship. And I think people still have to be very authentic, but when you're looking at who you want to work with, you just have to check everything out, and make sure that people might stumble along the way. And I think it's interesting, like in this climate, you might see an influencer say something on social media about politics. Well, that's who they are. And does that reflect poorly on you as a brand if you're collaborating with them? No, that's their opinion. And so you just have to be, you have to be careful and cautious, but also be realistic that everyone's human. And so taking away from The Last Dance, it's just like, what a different era. That was 30 some years ago. And in today's society, you have to be authentic and be a real, let everyone know who you really are.
I think that's a great point about audiences being able to separate the influencer's beliefs from the brand. And we have some brands that we work with who get really worried about a stray opinionated tweet from an influencer. And I usually pull out the Jared from Subway example and say, look,
Exactly, right?
everybody knew that Subway was not directly involved in Jared's terrible behavior, and the business continued to thrive after that. I think
Sure.
we're all savvy enough to be able to separate the brand from the person. So thank you for adding to that, because I know there are still a lot of people who are nervous about collaborating out there because they feel like it would be a direct reflection of their brand.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I didn't tell you this yesterday, but I went to Michael Jordan's high school. My entire
What?
family is like
What?
huge Michael Jordan fans.
That's so funny that we brought that up. Oh, how
Yes,
funny.
my brother named his son Jordan. It's a whole
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
So
That's great.
yeah, I loved the mention of The Last Dance. It was definitely a story about hard work and
Oh my gosh,
consistency.
hard work. Yeah, and
Yes.
that's the one thing. If people take the time to watch it, it's like 10 parts, but it's so good. And there's things that you just didn't know, right? It's amazing.
So a question from the audience: was there a partnership that didn't work out for you, and what did you learn from it? Certainly, you don't have to give us any details.
No, no, no. I'll go into them. I'm not gonna give you the names. They'll
Yeah.
remain nameless. But the one thing I'll say out of it is you need to dot your I's and cross your T's with everything. Everything. And what else is, I mentioned previously our largest event of the year. We had some things that went off the rails, just lots of different things. and you have to make sure you have rock solid contracts. And I think that's one thing is sometimes people are like, oh, a contract with an influencer thought leader. Oh, I don't know. Make sure you work with legal. Everyone's on the same page. You have everything in there. And I tell you, in 2020, I think we're going to put a clause in there about if aliens should land. I mean, so much stuff has happened, but I'd say that that is the big takeaway is that things are going to go right. You always have to have an option B, but also you have to be able to be agile and be able to pivot that if something happens, right? And so I always tell my kids this line, which you'll laugh at, but it's like there's always a solution to a problem. You might not like what you have to do or what it is, but there's always a solution. And so as long as you have that mindset that you always have to have a backup plan, and a lot of times people don't even think of that. And I'm like, think of everything that could go wrong and make sure that you have that in a contract. And then everyone's on the same page and everyone's good.
Yeah, contracts are also a great way to level set expectations. Sometimes we'll get questions from clients about something that we had not covered off, and it's a really important moment to say either, yes, we're absolutely going to deliver that for you. We just assumed that that was expected, but
yeah,
about it our scope at all.
Yep. Yep.
All right. So storytelling and authenticity and relationship building. I love those as like the three takeaways. But if there is anything else that you would share with this audience today, something that you feel like they could do now that would set them up for more success in marketing or cultural relevance or influencer, whatever your advice is, let's hear it. Hit us with it.
Well, let's say the number one thing is just hit the damn button and start. I think that's the one thing is people get hesitant. They're like, wait, we need to prove this. Oh my gosh. And it goes back to my VP, Megan Sullivan, when I was in the small and mid-sized enterprise business, is that she was like, innovate, go try something. And it's okay to fail. And I think a lot of people in this industry are like so afraid to fail. And I'm not saying go out there and be like, we've got a budget of $1 million, let's go fail. No, 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 no. Start off small, do your research, figure it out, but just do something. That's the number one thing. And I know like in the B2B space, people are so hesitant. I'm like, no, just start. You could just start a blog series. Just start with something because then you learn from it. I don't like to say there are mistakes made. There's always lessons learned so you can go to the next one and keep innovating.
Thank you so much. I see Nina is here. So Ursula, I really appreciate your time today. And also over here is a fireplace that I have never lit before because I live in LA, but you've really inspired me to figure out how to build a fire over there. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
And Ursula, I think you left us with like such a good nugget just to sum up the day. Like there are no mistakes. You know, you have to try things and learn from them. Life is all about lessons. So hopefully that'll be everyone's main takeaway from today. Go make some mistakes that are not mistakes. They're just lessons.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for closing out such an amazing day on cultural marketing. And a special thank you to our speakers for such engaging and insightful conversations today. I think we all took so much out of it, you know, from Louis. And I mean, there's too much to even go through at this point. And thank you all for being such a great audience all day. And make sure that you tune in every day for the amazing Bycast series, tweet, share on Instagram, and we will see you again.